What can we learn from nature to tackle the polycrisis? Before we start, who of you consumed social media or news in the past 24 hours? To you, just to see a bit the reactions. Right? Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. So everybody, as expected. I'm not sure about you, but when I look at my feed, it often looks like this. Biodiversity crisis. We have a war crisis. We have a pollution crisis. We have a poverty crisis. We have an AI crisis. We have a mental health crisis. We have a climate crisis. Holy shit. For such a smart species that we always claim us to be, we're doing a lot of fucked up shit to us and to this planet, to our own well-being and so forth. Now, that led even some of us to describe our own species as cancer, which is quite drastic to, describe yourself as a cancer that unfortunately takes so many lives. But what if there was an alternative? Right now, we see cancer as something that is destroying life, and we see ourselves sometimes as this kind of destroying life force. But what if there would be an alternative? The alternative today I want to talk with you about a keystone species. What if we, instead of destroying life, we could bring life? In nature, keystone species are species that are, all species are important, but they are even more important because they shape the ecosystem. They help other species to thrive. And so what I want to talk to you today about this, if we can maybe, as a species, we can move from being something like cancer to something more like a keystone species where we bring more life than what we destroy. So how could that actually look like? First, we would start to clean up our home. Right now, we're doing it quite a messy job. So if we compare that with our house, with our flat, what we're doing to our planet, we wouldn't live like that in our own four walls. Second is we would make peace with us and with other species. Right now, that is definitely not the case. We would get to know our flatmates. So Oliver was just talking about this. Right now, we don't even know how many flatmates we have, ergo how many species we actually have. Nobody knows. Nobody exactly knows how many species we have. That's often like still crazy to me. So we're living on the planet without species, yet we don't even know how many other species there are. Not even talking about their behavior, not even talking about the different skills, their DNA, what they're actually doing on this planet. Not even talking about this, but just the sheer number of who are we sharing this home planet with, we don't even know. The fourth would be going back to that baseline that Oliver was talking about. So if we would become a keystone species, actually, we would slowly but surely go exactly where Oliver said, moving back to that baseline, going backwards. And fifth, we would hopefully, when we cleaned up our home, when we got our stuff together here on our planet, maybe in the future, we can even bring life to the galaxy. We could go to Mars, which is right now, at least as much as we know it, don't really have life on it. We could actually bring life to other planets. So we could definitely become a keystone species that shapes and brings life. All right, cool. But Ollie, how did we get there? So that's again something where I would encourage everybody to look into nature. So if we look at just on the time scale that we're here on this planet, is that our species is around like 300,000 years. So that's like very short. It's very long if we compare it to like, now it's 2024. It has been some while, but if we compare that to life on our planet, that's 4 billion years ago where that started. So nature is pretty much the best performing research and development department in this world. And I think we should, have a bit more humility and look a bit more into nature for some guidance. So again, I invite everybody to come with me and see a bit like what nature is doing and maybe discover things that we can learn from this. I think there were a lot of things that animals are doing, we can also see in our society. When we see animals, there's usually 3 reactions that they have when it comes to danger, which are, in our case, the different crises. So when an animal faces danger, like a lion, a leopard, and so forth, there's usually like 3 reactions. Flight. So basically you just run away. Freeze. So they wait and they don't move at all. And so they hope that the predator won't see them and so forth. And we have fight. So where you start charging because that's the only way outwards. And I believe we see the same thing happen in our society when we are faced with danger, like the climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, war, pollution, and so forth. We have people that so they just pretend it's not their problem. They just run away from it and just do business as usual, do their daily lives, but running away from it as far as they can. And we have people that freeze, that somehow realize, there's something off in this world, but shoot, there's so many things that are messed up and so many different solutions. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to trust. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm not going to do anything. So these are people that freeze. And then we have the people that fight. So the fighters are those people that see, okay, there is a danger, but we need to start doing something about this, and not like physically fighting, but fighting in terms of changing the status quo and how the system currently is running. So these are people like that run NGOs, that do biodiversity businesses, that are activists in all kind of shapes or forms, that can be parents that try to raise the next generation in a better way. It can have all kind of shapes, but it's those people that actually take action, that don't just talk and say, oh, this is messed up and this is messed up and oh, we're all going to die. But people that actually take action. So these are the fighters. Now, again, question comes a bit to you. I would love to know where you sit right now. Are you somebody that rather flees? Are you somebody that rather freeze right now when it comes to all these crises? Or do you think you're a fighter? And again, that is all coming not from a place of judgment at all. It's just important to know a bit like where you sit so that you can then maybe make the next steps. So I'll quickly come back. And we would just like to see quickly in the comment section what you would identify yourself with. Just to see, I have a certain, I think that there's a certain kind of type of person here, but I don't want to be biased. So just check. So fight, honey badger. Yeah. All right. So I have a couple of fighters. And then what do we do from that? All right, Ollie, understood. Let's look into nature. We have some people that flee, freeze, and fight, but what can we really do with this? I think we should, to maximize our energy in order to really have the impact that we want to, we should prioritize. We should first try to help the fighters, and we should focus on the freezers, and then we come to the flighters. I don't think we can tackle everybody at the same time. Personally, I'm always somebody, okay, let's take tiny steps towards the better direction. And where do you start? If you can't like talk to everybody, which group do you think has like the biggest impact to start with? And I think that's the fighters. They already have a lot of things figured out. So they have often like already the knowledge, they have solutions, they've really understood the pain points of the different problems. And I'm not talking just here about the biodiversity crisis. There can be climate, there can be justice, there can be poverty. But these fighters, they already understand the problem really well. And they came up with a solution that could actually get out of this. So often you would be surprised how little support they actually get in their efforts. I don't know. I talk by now, I'm doing this now for 3-4 years where I'm on this journey, and I talk with countless people in NGOs, in businesses, and policies, and you would be surprised how little support they get in terms of finance, in terms of like voices, in terms of attention, and so forth. So just by working together and helping to support each other so that they get the support that they needed would already help a lot. Second, unite. So what I often see there as well is that you have certain silos. You would be surprised how you would always think, we have this bigger audacious goal that we're working towards, no matter if it's like nature or when it comes to regulating our climate. But if you look at really deep down on COP, on LinkedIn, on in-person conversation, you sometimes can still shine through that we're not collaborating enough, even though that we are chasing the same end goal. And the third is also holding accountable. So I see plenty of people that start very positively and they come out and they say, I have this like really great plan and I really want to change the world. But sooner or later, unfortunately, the toxic system that is currently running is slowly start grabbing them. So we always make sure that when we start on a really right foot, that we keep on challenging each other and that we also keep each other accountable so that we, really keep on the journey that we set out that we wanted to do. The second one are the freezers. So now, okay, we supported the fighters. Which group should we then engage with? And I think these should be the freezers because they're much easier to convince and to make part of, bring into our bubble and tackle the different crises. And the freezers, we do 3 things with them. The first is we provide knowledge because quite often people freeze because there is a gap between the knowledge that they currently have and the knowledge that they need in order to overcome this kind of freezing state. Because if you gain more and more knowledge, then sooner or later you will see the nuances between the different aspects of the crisis. The second one is giving agency. And that's very important for me. This is like what I do try to do 24/7 with our company. Is to try to really give people back the agency so that they know they can actually do something. And it can start with something really small as like changing your diet that can grow into something like, hey, how can I bring nature topics more into the school of my child? That can grow into like changing policies, that can grow into creating your own biodiversity business that can really grow. But it has to start with giving people back agency that they can actually do something about all of that stuff. And the third is making change convenient. As a very painful lesson that I learned, especially the last 2 years, is that if we compare nature protection, restoration, rewilding, and the crisis that I tackle the most, if I compare those activities with our activities that are currently very popular in our society, like online shopping or streaming and so forth, I see often that doing the really good thing for nature is much harder than kind of distractions that are not good for us. So really good concrete example, Amazon has this one-click shopping button. So you just look at something, you like it, you basically click on that one magic button and a product appears in 24 hours. And we need to find ways how we can make protection, restoration, rewilding, all of this positive nature work as easy as possible for the freezers to get them on board. Now, what do we do about the flighters? So I'm not going to lie. I think of all the three, these are definitely the toughest nut to crack. So I think there's three things how we can at least attempt to do that. The first one is awareness. I believe there are definitely some flighters that are still not really aware of this. At least I always hope so, because otherwise I have to commit to the idea that they're just like evil, and I don't necessarily want to do that. Also, urgency. Sometimes those people that flight, they don't understand how urgent the situation is right now, and that we can't wait another 30, 40 years of business as usual. The second one is to try to show them selfish benefits. So how can they benefit? How can we show them that these are actually opportunities? They're not just, this is forbidden, this is forbidden, this is forbidden, but how can we show them there's benefits on the health, on the financial perspective, on the food perspective, and so forth? So how can we make it as enticing as possible for them? And the third one is pressure. So we do it the nice way. We try the carrot, but sooner or later, we also need to come with the stick a bit. If that is the only way how to do things through legislation, policies, and so on, we need to give those things really teeth so that they actually start to work, because right now they're definitely not, and they fail us. So how do we go from this? We basically start to pollinate from first fighters, then to freezers, and then to flighters. So we are creating some sort of keystone individuals that then bring change to individuals, that bring change to their families, that bring change to their communities, to the companies they're working in, to governments, and so forth. Really, in a nutshell, what was I talking about? No matter what crisis you find most important to tackle, I think nature has a great blueprint for that. Where we can be a keystone species, we don't have to be cancer. People are in different kind of situations. Some are do flight, some are freezing, some are fighting. And then we have to try to increase the number of keystone people that will drive the change. Now, if we do all of this, we will definitely see our social media, our news feed, and most importantly, the real world start to look like this. Rewilding company raises biggest VC round ever. We stayed within 1.5 degrees. 10 years in a row without war, and all SDGs met in 2 years in advance. Now, personally, I refuse to believe that this is an unrealistic dream. Ready to get your hands dirty?
Thank you, Oliver. Yeah, the reactions say it all. Amazing presentation. We have one question from Nico. Did I just hear an Elon Musk reference?
Did I just hear an Elon Musk reference?
I meant the Mars part.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's always a bit like very bizarre to understand like why we want to. I understand like why we want to expand to other planets. I just don't understand why we at least not start to clean up our home, because there's so much financials going towards expansion rather than first like figuring out how we can do a better job at home. Because right now, at least we have the 100% certainty that this is a really great place to be. It's a really great planet. So how can we first do our job at home, protecting, restoration, ensuring at least a decent life for everybody? And then we can still expand to like all different planets, like go for it. But there's so many problems to tackle here. Why go to Mars yet?
All right. Any other questions?
Ollie, just to it'd be great to get your. I know a lot of this is about giving people hope, yeah. And to get change, people have to be hopeful and to know that there's a path and there's a bright future. And I'd love to get in here. What's your approach to that? And obviously you got the community and sharing the stories. So we're aligned, aren't we, with sharing like the good stuff that's happening. But if there's any other advice or like tips you'd share around that?
Yeah, personally, I still try to find the sweet spot, because I'm somebody like, I love really positive messaging, because people need to see, because especially like the messaging that you, for example, chose for your presentation, a lot of people, you would be surprised how little people know Chris Tompkins. If you compare like the media coverage of Elon Musk and Chris Tompkins, it's just you can't even, on the chart, it wouldn't even work. Yeah. So I think positive stories are very important. And at the same time, I still try to find always the balance as well to bring in urgency. That it also stings a little bit. Yeah. Just because right now, for example, really great example was nature documentaries. You watch the nature documentaries and whales, and you see the wildebeest herds in Africa and so on. And you get this really, the idea of it is beautiful to show people like how amazing our planet is, but easily they get the misunderstanding of this is like really how big chunks of our world is looking like. When in reality, we have much more cows, we have much more dogs, we have much more chickens. And that would be a realistic nature documentary. And so I often like still try to bring in a bit of sting as well, so that they understand that we benefit in so many ways from nature. So let's get our stuff together ASAP, because right now we're losing it. One thing that I can just say in terms of communication is on social media, it's always a bit hard, especially if you reach a certain amount where you now try to touch more people and you niche down. But what I usually try, at least in conferences or when one-to-one conversations, I try to understand who's in front of me and how are they motivated. Are they motivated by finance? I'm not going to go the moral route. If they are interested in family, I go the family route. If it's, for example, health, 75% of cancer medication is coming from nature. Unfortunately, there's a high likelihood people lost somebody to that. So sometimes I use that route. So I usually try to think about, okay, who's in front of me and how can I not go, hey, nature's awesome, spiritual, and I love every single animal and you should too. But I really try to see, okay, who's in front of me and then cater to their motivations a bit. It's some people maybe don't like this approach, but for me, if you learn more about neuroscience and psychology, that's the route that makes most sense to change behavior. So, awesome. Thanks. Hannah?
Yeah, thank you. Awesome presentation. Both Olivers have got incredible visualizations, by the way, like really great slides. Yeah, I think Oliver, it's something that you posted today or something, like, was it today? Yeah, 7 hours ago, because I reshared it on LinkedIn and then I realized that actually it was you. I was like, oh, this is so relevant to something else earlier today. I'm going to pop a link in the chat. And then I was like, it literally was what you said. It's your like Spotify Unwrapped thing, but like nature unwrapped. I don't know if the people on the call have seen this, but would definitely recommend definitely recommend going on Oliver's LinkedIn profile and seeing that, if not, because I thought that was so cool. Like the fact that you're taking like a very like established and mainstream thing, especially people love sharing about their taste in music. Like that. Such like, I don't know why, but people just go absolutely crazy for the Spotify Unwrapped thing. And then reframing that as this is how much I benefited nature personally. Like these are how many sort of like species that like my action has positive impact, or different environments that have grown as a result of my like advocacy or activism or whatever. I just thought that was so cool. And I don't know, it just reminded me as well of if we reframed the whole conversation about taxes, and people were boasting about how much their tax contributions is helping their country, rather than it being seen as this, oh, the rich won't want to get taxed, they're going to offshore all their assets, they're going to do as much as they can to avoid paying the taxes that they should pay. If they were able to reframe that and see it as a contribution to society in the same way this sort of like nature unwrapped thing could be seen as individual, like contribution to nature, I think that would just be so cool. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight it because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, and the beauty of this is like what I wanted to show with this, it's actually not really unrealistic and it's actually not really hard to do. So Oliver was just sharing all the data that he is collecting with Earthly. And so it's just sometimes about user experience design, but he can basically do something very similar to his companies already. So sometimes it's just about like how we are, sometimes it's just about like how we are phrasing things and how we are building things and what we give like priorities. And another thing, and like to come back to Oliver's question, I think one of the really thing where I feel often when we are facing this kind of crisis is it's a very daunting topic. You need to try to understand a bit like what motivates people and what are people giving their attention to right now, and then trying to play a bit with that. So I look a lot in this kind of like pop culture and so on, and try how we can find in there. Because if we look at cities nowadays where most of us live, there is no nature. It's very limited, and we spend 90% of our time indoors. So how can you create these touch points? How can we make it relevant to a person that is in front of you? So